Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a skit? Today, we're comparing two iconic films, the original and remake of Cat People. The 1942 supernatural horror movie was directed by Jacques Tourneur and produced by Val Lewton for RKO Pictures. The 1982 remake was directed by Paul Schrader and was produced by Universal Pictures. And for this discussion, I'll be joined by a very special returning guest, Terence Miguana, the fellow creator and patron who started this whole comparison series in the first place with the Haunting movies. Please join me in welcoming back Scare Bear.
Wow! Hi, Doreen. How are you doing?
Hello. Good to see you, Terry. Good to see you. And thank you so much for coming back for another chat.
Oh, my pleasure. Really looking forward to discussing these two films with you.
Yes, I'm so excited. I was actually a little skeptical when you brought these two films up, but very intrigued. I'm so glad you insisted on covering these films because they are beautiful. There's a lot to talk about with these, and I'm just so excited that both films were first-time watches for the both of us.
And that was kind of my intention, was because I'd heard so much about these movies over the years, and they've always escaped me. And I thought, wow, this would be a great opportunity to watch them both and discuss them both.
Hell yeah, yes. And so the 1942 classic premiered at the Rialto Theater in Manhattan, captivating audiences with its low-budget, high-suspense narrative. It introduced us to Irina Dobrova and her haunting fear of an ancient curse that transforms her into a panther when she becomes jealous or aroused. Fast forward to 1982, and the story takes a twist with Nastassja Kinski portraying Irina in a more sexually charged and visually intense reinterpretation. Both films explore themes of transformation, sexual repression, and the beast within, making them compelling subjects for comparison. Both films also offer fascinating insights into the evolution of horror cinema and cultural storytelling. So Terry, you told me the other day that you watched these as a double feature back to back. What were your initial thoughts of both films?
Well, first of all, if anyone's going to watch them back to back, I must insist that you watch the 1942 version and then the 1982 version, because it just wouldn't work. I don't think. But yeah, it was. I thought the first one was an extremely compelling story, right? Even though it doesn't have dazzling special effects or like gore, I was thoroughly entertained by the original film. Even though you might say it looks a bit clunky, the 1942 sort of dialogue, the acting style seems old. I don't think so. I think it's brilliant, and I loved its uses of jump scares. And from what I understand, it was one of the first jump scares. Don't know if that's one of the facts, but
yeah.
But yeah, I loved its use of jump scares in it. Which I think one of them was eventually became the Newton jump scare, because after Val Newton, they nicknamed it after him because it was so effective. But yeah, I was immensely. I loved the first one. In fact, I loved it so much that when I started watching the second one, I was more offended by the second one. Even though after watching that, I loved that also. But I just found that the liberties that it took with being more explicit, not just with the violence, but also the sex as well, I felt took away a lot of what made the original one so special. But I understand it's a different beast.
Oh, sure.
Right? And
the 80s,
baby. Yeah, exactly. And from what I get as well is that Paul Schrader, who directed the second one, wasn't really intent in making a remake of Cat People. He was more interested in other aspects of it rather than, following the original beat for beat. In fact, I think one of the biggest letdowns for me with the remake is when it does try to do sort of callbacks to the original, such as the classic swimming pool scene.
Oh, yeah.
That was so effectively done in the original, but I don't think it worked as well in the remake. It felt as though it was kind of shoehorned in there just to go, hey, remember this classic scene? right? We
Oh,
can't do a
yeah.
King Kong remake without the Empire State Building. So with cat people, it's the same. It's like we've got to have the swimming pool.
For me, also, there's a scene in the 80s that was almost worse than what they did in the 40s. I'm like, how does a film 40 years later do it worse? And it was when the sister walks up to them at the bar. I'm like,
Yeah.
it worked so much better when they were having their engagement party at the restaurant versus at this bar. It just was so jarring, and it didn't vibe as well as in the original.
Anything you want to know about this city, ask me. I know all the unimportant details.
Moja sestra. Moja sestra.
Grab me when I want to die.
Overhand or underhand?
Under. I know the type.
And there was this one boy.
Mi hermana.
What?
Mi hermana.
So for me, the original did an amazing job with creating a spooky atmosphere, and they knew how to work those shadows. But the remake was a film of its era, and they let it all hang out, unlike what its predecessor was unable to do because of censorship laws at the time, giving us fans of the original movie the sexuality and emotion we were craving when watching the first one. Now, that might be more pertaining to me than for you, because you just mentioned how, it kind of took away a little bit from the mystery, but we'll get more to that. First movie is a perfect example of blending horror and noir. The director only gives us sound effects and shadows of our creature, aside from the times when we see the feline caged at the zoo. And while the reason for doing this is cited as being a tight budget, Tourneur would have likely still made this creative decision. Producer Val Lewton had been writing for MGM before being offered a production team by RKO to produce a string of low-budget horror films. RKO had been struggling financially after the box office failures of Orson Welles' last two films, Citizen Kane and The Magnificent Ambersons. Wanting to compete with Universal's monster movies, they wanted Val to produce movies that would rival titles like Frankenstein, Dracula, and The Wolfman. Instead, we got Cat People, a different kind of horror. With a small budget of $140,000, small even in the 40s, Val Lewton's first production ever and first film for RKO was hugely successful, grossing $2 to $4 million, even though sometimes that is debated. Val would go on to produce 10 more movies for RKO throughout the 40s. The three rules that Val Lewton had to abide by when creating these movies were: the budget had to be under $150,000, and the film had to be under 75 minutes, and supervisors would provide the title before the start of production, just like they did with Cat People. And as much as I love a good creature design and practical effects, I also deeply appreciate an artist who can evoke fear from its audiences with only music, slanted camera angles, and dramatic lighting.
I do love that lead actor. I thought she was fantastic. Absolutely was smitten by her performance. Simone Simon. I felt that there was an actual transformation of her. Like, speaking of the great swimming pool scene, when she appears after the lights go on, and she actually feels kind of fearsome. I didn't get that as much with Nastassja Kinski. I felt Nastassja Kinski wasn't as good. Maybe it's just maybe because I watched them back to back and I'd fallen in love with Simone Simon, and then Nastassja Kinski followed on. I didn't feel that she. I don't know. I didn't feel like her character changed. I know she physically changed, right, which was a cool scene, but her character I didn't feel had evolved very much. She didn't become a sort of. I feel like Simone Simon became more like a kind of femme fatale by the end of the film, a bit more creepy as a person, not as a creature. But with Nastassja Kinski, I think she kind of stayed the same. She always kind of seemed kind of sort of doe-eyed, kind of unaware, which worked for the first half of the movie. but I didn't feel it kind of translated in the latter half. I thought it would be great if she was more of a femme fatale by the end of it.
Yeah, the ending was a little bit lackluster in the remake because, in the original, we have Simone Simon, who is, an amazing actress. Like, I don't want to say she's one of the best, but I liked her in this movie. She played this part really well. She's supposed to be just prim and proper and doing what the white American man, Christian man wants her to do and conform to this way. Because, she's an immigrant from Serbia and she's never been in love or been with a man. And, this man who wants to basically possess Irina. And he married her quickly before even kissing her or having sex with her. And I'm just like, that was your fault, bro, in the first place, And so I don't know if you came across this theory, but I came across this theory in doing research for this chat. And again, like in The Haunting, lesbianism came up. And I'm like, that's an interesting theory. Maybe she didn't even like men in the first place because we have Alice, who she's chasing around most of the time, not because she's in love with her, but, Alice is the one that gets a lot of the attention over Oliver.
That's right, because there's this book, Monsters in the Closet, by film theorist Harry Benshoff, that argues that Cat People is about homosexuality, that says it was kind of, it played out a growing awareness of homosexuality at the time.
Yeah.
So, it's seen as one of these kind of groundbreaking movies in that aspect. But do you know what it is? I think, and I think one of the great horror films, whether it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Shining, they leave enough empty space so that we can see things that might not be there or they could be there. And I think Cat People is a perfect example of that. I even like some of the sort of background things, right? And I thought I'd add to that myself. The little cat
Hello,
statue
kitty.
is there was some paintings in the background of cats and stuff like that. You just notice all these sort of things. Yeah, so well done.
Yeah.
You see, the Mamelukes came to Serbia long ago, and they made the people slaves. Well, at first, the people were good and worshipped God in a true Christian way. But little by little, the people changed.
When Paul Schrader is not trying to repeat the original, that's when it really works. And what can I say? But I honestly think the best thing about the entire film, as far as performances goes, is Malcolm McDowell. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Because Malcolm McDowell's an actor that I've never really liked that much, apart from A Clockwork Orange. I always think that he either repeats that part or he does some sort of supervillain in Star Trek or something like that, or Tank Girl. All right, that's what I know him for. But I loved what he did in Cat People, because at the very beginning, I mean, it takes its time before it tells you that these characters are incestuous. Well, I mean, that the only way that the cat people can kind of
he's incestuous
is incestuous.
Or he wants to be. Yeah.
Well, that's what he explains, but the movie doesn't explain that to you in the first half of the film, so you're kind of going, man, that brother's really creepy.
Yeah. Like, why is he getting so close to her? Why is his lips so close to her neck?
Yeah. When he's like touching her at the start, you're like, get your hands off me. That's what I was feeling, which was good. It's a horror film, right? I'm supposed to feel kind of creeped out. And as the movie goes on, you're thinking, God, he's a psychopath. Malcolm McDowell's an absolute psychopath. And he was brilliant. I love that shot, which they did in reverse, where he leaps onto the bed. That was brilliant.
So good.
But then when we get to that cool scene where he explains it all, and it's actually, this is the mythology of the cat people. Sorry, but, we're bastards. but it's great.
Yeah.
I like them. I'm actually going, well, that makes sense, right? They can't help it.
They're
They're monsters.
People? Yeah. He wants to save the world by... not turning into a panther because, why not? Go for it, girl. But
it makes logical sense.
The 80s was a golden age for practical effects, and the 82 remake is no different from the rest of the films from that decade. Not only did we get full-on nudity, we also saw our brother and sister lead morph into their cat forms. And in thinking about the era that the movie is from, did you appreciate this new approach with the practical effects?
Oh, yeah. Do you know what I really appreciated when she did transform into a cat creature? They didn't repeat what An American Werewolf in London and The Howling had did the year before, because those were jaw-dropping, those movies, right? And I thought, I mean, that was one of the reasons I haven't seen Cat People for such a long time, because An American Werewolf in London, throughout my childhood, I refused to watch because I seen it as a kid and it terrified. It was my first major horror film, right? So it really had an effect on me. That and the Thriller video, which were both done by Rick Baker, effects-wise, and John Landis. The effects just blew my mind. And Cat People, I always remember seeing it in the video store and looking at the video cover going, oh, that's one of those Werewolf in London type movies. I don't want to see it, so I avoided it for all that time. But yeah, the effects were good. I loved how they went for a different type of transformation, where she kind of burst out of the actual skin. The cat came out of the skin. I thought that was different from what was happening at the time.
Yes, I definitely loved seeing those claws pop out of Paul's knuckles, and his feline contacts just looked so good and creepy. And one of the times Paul turns back into his human form, he takes a piece of his skin and he eats it. And it is just so fucking disgusting. That was one of the parts I'm just like, I can't even look at that. I know it's just like a piece of turkey or ham, but I just couldn't. And just like in the original, it was created with the intention of being a B movie. And it wasn't setting out to win any awards or anything, although it did earn 2 Golden Globe Award nominations and 1 Saturn Award nomination. But it went on to become an iconic film in history, and was even selected by the Library of Congress for representation in the National Film Registry, along with the original that same year, which I think is totally warranted for both films, even though, like you, I think I would have to gravitate more toward the original, but both films are so good.
Oh, but honestly, it was one of the best nights watching a film this year, was watching both of them together. If you're watching the original going, oh, where's the gore, where's the sex, where's the violence, right? Then the remake's for you, right? Because that will deliver what the original doesn't, whereas the original will deliver what the remake doesn't. That's great. I think it's a perfect example of 2 vastly different interpretations of the same type of story. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and to go back to what you mentioned before, the Luton bus, I just love that too, where it was kind of created by accident, because we have Alice, running through the park, and she feels a presence following her, and she feels that it's not a human presence either. And then we kind of hear like a bit of a hissing sound, like a cat hiss, but then abruptly that sound gets a lot louder. We realize that then it's a bus actually, and it kind of pulls you back a bit because it's so jarring and so loud. And I loved seeing that kind of jump scare happen again in The Curse of Cat People. They do the same thing with the carriage ride and the Headless Horseman tale that they tell in that one. Loved it.
In the original 1942 film, there's a character, Dr. Judd, the psychiatrist, and even though the Hays Code is in place, he's allowed to be sleazy. That was kind of mystifying. I mean, he does like check her butt as she's walking by. It's like he ogles her butt. And also the brilliant kissing scene. That's fantastic. See the lighting and the look on her face as well. Oh, man. It's amazing that the Hays Code was put in place to protect us all from such depravity. But when they have it actually on screen, any sort of any example of physical contact was done inappropriately in the original Cat People. That's weird to think about. That's why I feel that the movie's being meta. It's kind of going, yeah, see this Hays Code, it's a real pain in the ass, and here's why. Right? Because there's a famous one, Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock, because apparently there was a time limit on how long you could hold a kiss on screen with another person in frame. And is it Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman are kissing in this scene, and Hitchcock did it in such a way that they break, have a line of dialogue, start kissing again, break, have a line of dialogue, start kissing again, so that he was getting around it. So he's pretty much having a really passionate kissing scene in his film, but cutting around it with the dialogue and things to get around the Hays Code. And that's the same sort of thing as what they're doing here in Cat People. It's when you think about it, I know, what is it, 80 years later or whatever, it's not subversive anymore, but it is. It kind of is, right? It's more subversive than a lot of horror films when in the past. I love it, and I'm so pleased that I watched both of them, and I was honestly buzzing about them for days after watching them. I was like, oh, must have listened to that David Bowie song like 20 times. And I'd heard it. The first time I'd heard it was in Inglourious Bastards when Quentin Tarantino used it. And I don't know, it did nothing for me, but when it was in Cat People, I was like, yeah, this kicks ass. The one thing that kind of puzzled me about it, though, is it was set in New Orleans, and it seemed desolate for some reason. And whenever I see I've never been to New Orleans, right? But whenever I see it portrayed in films, it's always a really bustling place, whether it's an Easy Rider, Live and Let Die, you name it. It's always, Mardi Gras, let's party, we're in New Orleans. Whereas
that's true, huh?
Cat People, it just felt desolate all the time. Even when they're driving along the motorway, it's like there's no one around.
Yeah, it's true. I did appreciate it taking place in New Orleans, though, because, New Orleans just is so rich with the history of witchcraft and voodoo. We also had the setting of our first film, which was New York, which, at the time was a more modern setting versus the Gothic backdrop we were so used to with other horror films. So it was, something new for that time period. It worked well to have a more domesticated horror versus like a creature feature type horror. The original was definitely successful in using avant-garde symbolism to overcome those industry censors to tell this classic were story. And so it's funny when towards the end we have Alice and Oliver in their workplace where Irina comes to attack them. He's using one of his, tools, not a protractor, but I forget what you call them, but it just looks like a cross in the silhouette. Again, just reinforcing my idea of like the Christian white, persona versus anything else that's not like it.
Yes, the other.
Yes, the other.
Exactly. And the fact that she's foreign as well in the mythology of the Cat People, it comes from a foreign land, sort of plays into that. Whereas I don't think the remake does that. I feel like the remake just makes it, it's mythological, but it doesn't make it into that kind of sense of the other. You don't feel, even though Nastassja Kinski's a German actor, you don't feel that she's treated like another by the rest of the cast. She she's part of the gang. That was the one thing that kind of, that was the one thing that kind of gypped me. And when I watched the remake, was her and Alice didn't have this rivalry like they had in the original. Because I like the love I like good love triangles. I used to watch a lot of soap operas as a kid, and I like a good love triangle. And the remake doesn't give me that. And I thought it was really strange that when she meets Alice in the remake, they got on really well straight away. And I was like, oh wait a minute, what's going on here?
When they introduce themselves to each other, I'm like, oh, that's just the nice part. They're going to get ugly later. But no, it just stays chill the whole time.
It stays that way. Yeah. I guess that Paul Schrader at the time is feeling that that's been done, right? That whole, we've seen that to death, so let's not go that way. I wanted the love triangle again, as cliched as it is, right? It just adds a bit more conflict, a bit more drama. And I felt Annette O'Toole had nothing to do in the remake, really. She was just there to just play that part, but without any direction, without any sort of purpose.
Sure, I feel that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm being really hard on the women in the film, but that it's not through their performances. Annette O'Toole is a great actor, and so is Nastassja Kinski. I've seen them in much better films, much better roles for them.
Yeah.
But they're underutilized. The script isn't giving them enough to do, I think. And I know for a fact that Paul Schrader got mildly obsessed with, well, saying it mildly, he got obsessed with Nastassja Kinski while they were making this film.
Yeah.
And I think that shows. I don't think she's actually presented as a fully rounded character. She's more of an object of desire.
Yeah, and she's just a sexual object, 100%.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on, give her more to do. And she can do better. The thing is, I've seen her in other films, like Unfaithfully Yours, which was a comedy she was in with Dudley Moore. that came out a couple of years after this. I thought she was fine in that. Give me that femme fatale. Give me that powerful character that she becomes. Like she becomes like her brother was at the beginning. He was totally in charge of being a cat person. Even when they have that discussion in the desert, he established that. So I think that should have been the jumping off point where she's like, right, okay, now I'm Catwoman. I can kick ass.
Yeah, right. I agree totally.
And that was the funny thing is when he signed up to do the movie, he's known for making very personal type movies like He wrote Taxi Driver, he wrote Raging Bull. And he directed probably his best film is this terrific film called Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. That is a gorgeous movie. That came out about 3 years after Cat People. It's perfect in every way. And but anyway, he had an affair with Nastassja Kinski while making the film. And she didn't really want to take it any further than that, right? Apparently, allegedly. And he pretty much, it kind of ruined his life at the time.
Oh, it did. I didn't realize it was that bad because the guy heard that he wanted to go propose to her, and she was like, "Bro, leave me the hell alone. I fuck all my directors," But allegedly, she said that, and she denied it. But I didn't realize it. Was he married at the time or something?
I think
or what?
So. Yeah, he was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if he was married, but he was in a serious relationship, and it kind of all went.
Tisk.
Two dogs.
It happens a lot on movie sets, man. Movie sets are a dangerous place for people in relationships. All right. Well, so out of 5 Rainbow Skulls, what would you rate each film out of 5?
I would say the first one 5 for what it is, right? I would give it a full 5 because it is a low budget, 80-year-old movie. So it does have that rickety 40s acting and stuff. There's no special effects, 0 special effects, but tons of atmosphere and a great story. And it's over and done in 5 minutes. Well, 70 odd minutes, right? It feels that way, but it just goes in like a shot. But yeah, 5 stars for that. And I would say 4 for the remake, just because it's an intensely stylish movie. It has some flaws here and there when it tries to remake the original, when it tries to pay homage to it. That's when it falls on its face. But when it's being its own beast, when it's doing its own thing, it is excellent. The style is gorgeous. The music's fantastic, and Malcolm McDowell is the best role I've seen him do outside of Clockwork Orange. He's so good in this movie. And 4. I'd give it a 4. Rainbow Skulls out of 5.
Wonderful. For me, I would give the original 4.5 Rainbow Skulls, and I'll give the remake 4 Rainbow Skulls out of 5. And I'm so glad you pushed for this discussion, because when you brought it up, I was just like, cat people. Why do we want to watch cat people? But, you pressed and I was like, all right, we'll do cat people. Let's see what's up. And I'm just so glad you did. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yep, exactly. You sure did. Well, do you want to do you have anything to share about what you've got going on? I know your channel is on a bit of a pause, but did you have anything you want to plug or share?
No, not really. But you can come. I've got tons of old content. You can look at my old stuff. It's not that dated, right? But I do plan on doing some new stuff in the new year. But I've got my plans have got a habit of falling flat on their face. So I don't know.
It's all
right?
Good.
I can't promise anything. But yeah, I just want to add, it's been great to be on this channel again. I love being on this channel. It's always a lot of fun. It's always great discussing movies. I mean, that's been a habit of mine my whole life. But yeah, thank you so much for having us on the show again, DeRay. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much. And can't wait to do it again very soon. And there you have it, Stardust, our comparison of the original and remake of Cat People. And take a look down in the description. You'll see all the links for Terence's socials and YouTube channel. And until next time, Stardust. Peace.